The Kinky Cocktail Hour is brought to you by Motorbunny, the world's most powerful saddle-style vibrator that offers fabulous, creative sexual experiences. We use it and it rotates, it vibrates, and it delivers mind-blowing orgasms. Enjoy Motorbunny as your favorite sex toy. When you order the Motorbunny, multiple attachments are included along with the Link controller, which allows wireless control from anywhere. Motorbunny is the world's most powerful saddle-style vibrator on Earth. Use the link in the show notes and spice up your sex life with a Motorbunny. You're listening to Kinky Cocktail Hour, a conversation between adults about sex-forward relationships, kinky lifestyles, and frank communication. If you're under 18, please stop listening and visit scarletteen.com. Hi, this is Lady Petra.
I'm SafferMaster.
And this is Kinky Cocktail Hour.
Cheers.
Cheers!
So what am I drinking today?
Well, you found this bottle in the back of the liquor cabinet.
Yeah.
That I think we've talked about it. You probably haven't had since I've been here.
No, it's been a long time.
So it's already a 14-year single malt scotch.
So now it's about 16 years.
So that's at least 16 years the drink you're having now. And it's the Balvenie 14-year Scotch whiskey. And the key to this one is they first mature it in oak casks, and then a certain period through the maturation. And what do they call those people? They call them the coopers. Coopernish.
The guys who make the casks?
Yeah. And that's one of the things about this distillery is that they grow their own barley.
Okay.
Which a lot of distilleries import in. It doesn't mean it's bad barley, but they actually grow on site in Scotland their own barley. They have their own traditional malting method that they do in-house. So not only when we went to Bainbridge Island to look at the whiskey, we saw them grinding the barley.
Yes.
But they malt and roast it.
Yeah.
So that's what they do. And then they have their own coopers to build their casks. So they have these oak casks for this. And then part of the way through, they put them in Caribbean rum casks to finish the aging.
Yeah.
And it gives it that real vanilla flavor.
It's got a definite...
And it's, they're in Banffshire,
okay,
Scotland. So it's an interesting... It looks like a real... boutique, if you will, distillery.
Yeah.
So you've had this in there for a while. You bought it for a reason at one point. You know what I mean?
I bought it because of the rum cask finish.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's been aging. So it'd be interesting. Now,
I'd forgotten about it. I hadn't touched it.
It's a small bottle, so you didn't see it probably.
Yeah, it was way in the back. There's just a little bit left. And...
So you're trying it neat?
Yeah, I'm trying it neat first. Then
okay.
It's got great legs.
That's great.
It's got a beautiful golden color.
Yeah, it's really golden, like it looks like Cuervo almost.
Yeah, the nose is very. It's got a lot of sort of syrupy notes in the nose.
Really? Okay. Like toffee.
Yeah, like toffee.
Yeah, and that's what they speak to.
And then
you do smell fruit at all?
Wow, it's got a really long finish.
Yeah, it says it lingering.
It lingers, and it lingers with vanilla and with toffee, and it lingers with sort of a sense I get like I'm drinking rum, but it's not rum.
Do you get the oak?
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the oak. Just try a couple drops of water in there.
This is going to be amazing when you do this because this is a nice aged whiskey.
The nose is immediately more fruity.
Okay, and they refer to that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm curious if you're going to taste fruit this time, because you tasted everything before that they are mentioning.
It's just beautiful.
It's very warm, vanilla smelling. Ooh. I taste the oak for sure.
Yeah.
I taste smoke.
Like tobacco.
Like tobacco.
Like cigar.
Like cigar.
Yeah.
But in a good way, of course,
yeah.
you know. And the vanilla toffee, I get that toffee there too.
Yeah.
So that's
a lovely bottle. That's one we might want to revisit.
So that's a great one. We definitely gonna want to revisit that one.
Yeah.
That one's good. So.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about today?
Well, before we jump into our topic, I want to just make a note about what it's like to convalesce with you.
Oh, really?
and you know, one of the promises of convalescing with your own collared slut is that sooner or later you're going to have like wicked hot sex.
Oh yeah.
And today was the day.
Wicked hot.
It's been about a week since we played.
Yeah.
Because your medications are up and down,
Yep.
and so there was a bit of a disruption in
Yeah.
our protocols.
Yeah.
But it worked out today perfectly. You know?
It really did for me because I got back on my medication correctly.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to wean off and I was having a bad reaction from weaning.
Yeah.
Pain just went up a lot yesterday, and so I got back on them last night, and so I regulated today. And today I actually, to be honest, I felt fine all day long.
Yeah.
And then I went and prepared myself and was really excited to be able to be used.
Yeah.
And fully used, because
Yeah.
last time we played, we didn't use my ass or anything, just
No.
because we were just easing into it,
Yeah.
you know. And I mean, you flogged me beautifully today, and you ate my pussy fantastically today, to the point I was shaking, and I do shake usually when I'm coming, but shaking a lot today, and then, like, you know, because of the cast, I have to get in a different position, like on my butt.
Yeah.
And it creates a different aspect when I'm worshiping your cock and things like that, but it gives me access to other things too, so it's kind of an interesting thing. And then you went back onto the couch and, you know, leaned back so I could have better access, which was fantastic. I can't speak for your perspective, but from my perspective, it was fantastic. So, like, ate your ass a little bit, finger your ass, and then I'm sucking your cock, and then this is a phenomenon in my head, and I don't know if that's why I feel so weird right now, but, like, I was so excited the whole time. Like, I was coming, like, while I was sucking your cock.
Wow.
And
I love that.
I don't know if you felt me, but I was shaking. Like, I was violently shaking.
While you were sucking my cock?
Yes.
Wow.
Like, I couldn't, that's never happened before. And I, you know, I didn't feel like I was shaking so much like I would want to stop, like there's something wrong. It wasn't like that, but it was intense, like super intense.
Yeah, for me too.
And I guess taxing, if you will, in a way that I've never been. Like, that was just, it was like twofold thing. And so, like, afterwards now, I'm
You're
wiped.
wiped. Yeah.
I'm wiped. I'm kind of pale, I'm sure. I feel a little funky. We got some food in me, and I felt a little bit better from that. And now, truly, because my meds have gone on board again, you know, I took them after that placing, but it took a while for them to come on board. I'm starting to feel better. I'm actually starting just now, after our scene was a while ago.
Yeah.
Feeling better now, but I was like, that was intense.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
intense.
we set up for the scene in bed last night.
Yeah, we did.
We set up for the scene in bed last night. I fingered you a little bit in bed, and
You held your cock.
you were
and
holding my
balls.
cock and balls, right? And I whispered in your ear that I was going to use you today.
And you're going to use me completely.
And then this morning, while I was still in bed and you were up, you know, working, I started texting you about how we were going to play.
Yeah, that was hot too.
Yeah.
Just that very, just erotic, sexy texting back and forth about where we are in our dynamic and what you're gonna do and what you want me, how you want me prepared. You know, that whole thing. It's all of it. Let's be honest, all of that from last night forward is foreplay. It's
all foreplay.
All the part that we're talking about with mental BDSM. It's the building of it, because I mean, you're right. When you're having a dynamic with somebody, or, you know, even if you're having vanilla sex, let's just say, with somebody, the real way to transform that process is the mental part.
Sure.
Is incorporating someone's mind into it, and it.
Yeah.
And I'm bought in on that because I recognize how powerful the creation we make in our heads and then we put it into action is so powerful that creates us in a huge space. So then, it's just all of the adaptations with my, recovery, but still being able to kneel before you and get my collar and just you direct me to where you want me to go. And,
there's a lot of erotic...
And you're patient with me with my cast.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of erotic tension
yeah.
that we create through the build-up.
Mm-hmm.
Ordinarily when we play, I normally take the dog for a walk while you get ready. Mm-hmm. And today you had a telephone conference call and then you needed to get ready. And so I took an extended walk, went to the grocery store, got groceries for dinner. But the whole time, I'm like aroused, like the whole time.
Well, and you can tell I was because you thought also my call would get done and then after I get done. And so you'd probably come home and there'd be this period of time.
Right.
But I was ready.
You were ready.
When you came home, I was already putting my scooter aside and be ready to crawl out, and I was ready.
Yeah, I hadn't been home 5 seconds. I was putting stuff in the fridge.
And I crawled by you.
Crawling by. Yeah, no, I love it. The sex itself is incredible. The
just seeing you in pleasure like that, it's just so. I don't know how to give words to it. We've talked about this all the time, but it's just to have your chosen partner.
Yeah. Right?
Someone you're choosing to be with, not just with by default. And then you see you're giving them pleasure and their head, eyes
ecstasy.
are rolled back in their head, they're ecstasy, they're just in the moment, they're not in full reality, they're in their cloud, if you will.
Totally.
And it's so amazing that you can do that. And likewise, you do that to me. I'm like freaking another place all the time.
I think it felt like it was just a few minutes, but it was over an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Of just intense sexual contact.
Yeah, and I think, and I didn't count because I lost count and I went back and forth. But, it took me about 70 strokes-ish. Before 100, I felt warmed up. And then, you went in, based on the songs, you went in and out of harder strokes. I don't know why my left hip was more sore than my right. It was just weird. And then it just, all of a sudden, it felt like everything firmed up really tight.
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden, it felt like that. And then it was like, you probably saw me leaning into you.
You totally did. You totally arched your back and pushed your butt.
Totally leaning into you. And with kind of rhythmic because I was coming so hard.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was so hard today in particular. I don't know what it is about today. It could be partly wound up with my convalescing, but it was so hard. It's like, you've probably experienced this. I'm sure you come so hard that you're just spent. You're just like
shaking.
You're shaking. You're a wet noodle.
Yeah.
You're no good for anything.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop.
No, it was like that. It was great. Yeah. And I think part of it, like we are used to playing every day.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And we're used to having scenes that are that hot on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And when we haven't done that for a week or more, and we get back into it, it's just it's like a relief in a way. It's
totally.
Yeah.
Well, and just to be so connected to you, it's our closest time together, in physical body as well as energy and all that, and it's just
it's great.
I love it.
No, I really dig it, and I just wanted to give a nod to an idea, which is how do you create intensity in a dynamic?
Right.
Don't have sex for a week if you're used to having sex every day.
Right. Yeah. And it wasn't like we were isolated from each other either.
No.
We've been with each other this whole time. But the intensity of today was just,
mind-boggling.
Yeah, I feel weak.
Yeah.
Like, actually feel weak.
Well, you might well be compared to what you're used to being, because you're not doing a lot lately.
It's weird. I feel like I'm not doing anything with my arms right now, and they feel like shaky.
That's funny.
It's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, getting on to today's topic.
Yeah, which was a suggestion by one of our podcast listeners and one of our coaching clients, Snowberry63.
Okay.
Wanted to see if we would discuss, how does poly or open relationships work within a dynamic? And since we just talked about Hotwives, cucks, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, let's pick that up, because that's an interesting conversation. Because, first of all, the question is, where does the dynamic live?
Right.
Right. Are you saying we want to add a third person to our dynamic?
Oh, an existing.
An existing dynamic? Or are you saying, I want you to go out and create a dynamic with somebody else and bring it home?
Right.
So first of all, everybody
or there's
understanding...
already a threesome poly.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, two of them all of a sudden decide, well, we want to try experimenting with this. Maybe the third one wants to do it. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
And there's another scenario where you've got a threesome, like a polyamorous threesome, and one of the parties has a dynamic outside.
Yes, outside of the poly
outside
group.
of the poly group. So all of these things are present as concerns. And the first thought that I have is that in any polyamorous construct, in any ethical, non-monogamous construct, communication is going to be the key.
Yeah.
And the communication between the different parties about the dynamic. For example, let's just create...
Let's just create one.
Let's create one. So you and I have a dynamic, and in this fantasy, we create that we're going to operate polyamorously.
Right.
And you decide to engage yourself with a submissive male that is not in our dynamic, right? Because we don't have one in us, but there's one outside. Okay. So now, so now technically I'm the Metamour.
Okay.
You're in the dynamic. So what you create in that dynamic occurs as a conversation between the two of you. However, you have some responsibility to our dynamic.
Obviously.
And so the ability to feel free to explore whatever you're going to explore has to originate with an agreement between us about what's on the table, what isn't.
Right.
So communication, that's going to be the first thing. So now, let's say in that same experience, let's say enough time passes and you feel, close to this person and you want to bring them into our dynamic to create a threesome.
Still have to communicate.
Still have to communicate, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's always going to be in communication. I was involved in a polyamorous dynamic where I was the dom over a, masochist, and she had a marriage that she was part of, that he wasn't part of our dynamic.
Right, but he was in communication.
He was in communication with me. But, he would object to her that I marked her, but he would never object to me.
So was it a real objection, or was it part of his dynamic about, I think I know who you're talking about, was the kind of reclaiming of her, like, okay, so if he's reclaiming, he's dominant over her, so he's taking his dominance in the part of I own you, right?
Yeah.
And so to see her marked by someone else is not what he wants as a dominant who owns her.
Right.
And so he could be objecting purely because of the dynamic shift, or he could really be objecting.
Well, he had a personal objection.
He really objected.
He didn't like her being marked.
Okay, he really objected.
Because he felt like she was playing too hard.
Okay.
Right. Now, anything that I did with her, I had agreements with her around, and, he had presented her to me, so...
And he had never put that in an agreement ahead of time and said, you can't do this.
No, he never created any conditions.
So you found out about the... Objection from him or from her?
From her.
Yeah, so he didn't even come to you.
No.
Which, if he was clearly against it, he would have come to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. She allowed for him to object to her, but, she had it like that's part of her agreement with me.
But she might have had an agreement with him, too, where the objection was noted in the sense that, okay, as the dominant, then he's going to discipline her for being marked.
Right.
For allowing that to happen. Kind of like when you talked about, I think the same person, but because she was seeing other people too.
Yes.
Or maybe whether it was agreement on your part or not, but it was part of the dynamic you created in the sense that if she had seen someone else or something to the effect of, she would get disciplined or something along those lines.
Well, the agreement I had with her was, she had declared me as her owner.
Oh, okay, yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so she said, can I play with somebody else? And I said, yes, you can, but they can't mark you.
Oh, okay.
So you're going to come for inspection after you play with them.
Okay.
And if she came for an inspection and she had marks, then she got disciplined.
Okay, got it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was, I guess all of this is coming down to the same thing, which is for any dynamic to work, the dynamic has to be in communication.
So let me ask you this. Based on what you just explained,
Yes.
not questioning your integrity
Yes.
at all, but
Yeah.
I'm just, how integral I am,
Yeah.
high order.
Yeah.
In that scenario, okay, so if it was me and I heard my sub say, my dominant wife at home hates it when you mark me, I would say, well, then we have to have a conversation with her about it. I mean, you have to have a conversation with her about it, but then I need confirmation directly from the source, because that's one thing I hear in poly a lot is don't play the telephone game.
Yeah.
Get the conversation directly from the source. Now, you're right. Maybe he was just objecting to object because they had some other side dynamic. But the idea would be, for me at least, and I'm not judging, I'm asking this more as like a rhetorical question. Wouldn't it have been good just to say, I need to ask you, clarify this?
Yeah. In retrospect, that came up in a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and she said it wasn't necessary because she had cleared it up. Like she had dealt with it at home.
So I get that too, but you're still a threesome.
Yeah, but
Does that make sense? What I'm
yes,
trying to get
because
at?
he's the Metamour,
Mm-hmm.
and I did have communication with him,
Mm-hmm.
but I never communicated with him about marking her, because my agreement with her was to mark her,
And so technically, when she first met you, that little interview or meeting,
Yeah.
when she found out what your intention was as a dominant,
yes,
because I'm sure you were clear,
yeah,
she, in all intents and purposes, she would have gone home and explained to her partner, this is what he said, or this is what his idea is. And then they would have worked out does that sound right or not?
The issue of marking never came up in the early conversations between her and him.
But you were clear about
I was
it.
clear.
I'm sure you were clear
I was
about
clear.
it.
Yeah, I was clear. And she came knowing she was going to get caned. That was just part of the conversation. And, as I mentioned on the Kinky Introverts podcast, if you're getting caned, you're getting marked.
Yeah.
Okay. So she knew that. I knew that. She went home and said, he's going to cane me. They had their conversation. She agreed to come and play with me ongoingly for, a year or two.
Yeah.
So at a certain point in that dynamic between her and her husband, he complained about the marking.
Mm-hmm.
And the way she reported the conversation is he asked her, why do you want to get marked? And she said, because I feel it here, pointing at her pussy.
Mm-hmm.
So they worked it out.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think the way to go about that is not to play telephone game.
Yes.
To really, truly... because if you're talking about consent...
Yes.
And that means consent with all parties, because everyone's consenting.
Yeah.
Then it really is consent in the sense of... The responsibility is that she needs to have a conversation, because everyone's communicating. She needs to have a conversation with her partner. But the reality is, then you need to have a conversation with him too. So that you understand there's been clarity on what you said to her. Not that you're assuming anyone's lying, but what you said to her, did she... Because people, even when you say something, you think, I was very clear, why didn't they get that?
Yeah.
And then they take it and tell someone else, and it's twisted, and you're like, how did that get turned? Then you talk to him, let's say, and say, this is what I understand your conversation with her has been. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, and I think that had our relationship continued, that conversation would have had to have occurred.
Yeah.
Because we were getting into like pretty intense marking scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, our play was getting pretty dark.
Yeah.
And so we would have to have had that conversation eventually.
Yeah.
As it turns out, that never came to bear because we ended our relationship, our dynamic, and so that's just what happened. And so I think that whether it's that dynamic, where you have a dynamic at the party outside isn't part of that dynamic, or you have a dynamic where that party is part of the dynamic, it's the same thing. It all lives in the world of being clean in your communication. And I say clean communication because you really want to speak authentically about what you need and want, and to seek clarification about what you understand them to need and want.
That's exactly what I said, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you want to duplicate what people say to you.
Well, and that would be my thing is, I know I'm hyper about that. And it's not like I'm trying to give away my power or control to a Metamour to say, well, they're going to just make a decision and that's going to dictate what I do. But at the same time, if they're in that much against it, let's just say, or the go-between sub has, let's say, manipulated a little bit the conversation. Well, then that leads me immediately to say, okay, first of all, that's a problem with the sub's integrity right there. For two people in this threesome.
Yeah.
So that one is a bad thing, and I want to be with someone who's integral. So that's a bad thing. But then also, which affects the trust of the whole dynamic on all of it. And the idea is to say, let's say your intention, because you're clear, I want to mark you, and I'm going to mark you, and we're going to progressively mark more, and blah 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 blah. You know, if she went right to him and said exactly that without knowing, I mean, he doesn't know the specifics because until you guys play, he won't know. But then he could say, well, I don't want that. But I'm sure that's not what happened. I'm sure it was after she's marked, he sees them, that kind of thing. Well, the reality is you expressed what it was that should have gone to her.
No, I agree.
And you assumed it did too, because...
Well, okay, so the clarification I got at the outset of that particular dynamic was that, when you cross the threshold of my apartment, breathing is optional.
Privilege.
Yeah, it's a privilege,
Privilege,
right? Yeah. So anything I'm up to counts as good, and you've got to be good with that, or don't come over.
Right. Okay.
Right, like you've got to, like you're not coming here with a bunch of restrictions and a checklist of do's and don'ts.
Exactly. Right. You're
coming over here and you're getting unclothed and you're crawling through the living room and you're going to be used the way that I use you. And that's what she wanted, right?
Oh, totally.
And that's what she got. And the marking came up, it wasn't right away. It came up much later in the relationship where the marking was getting pretty severe and intense. And that's when she reported they had a conversation about that. Yeah. So look, let's just talk about, in a circumstance where you've got effectively a vanilla couple, and one of the partners has a polyamorous relationship with somebody else, where they have a dynamic, like a kink dynamic. And so now the Metamour is a vanilla.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So now,
that's tough.
That's going to be much tougher, right?
It's a lot tougher because,
It's a lot tougher for a lot of reasons. First reason is, I believe, and my experience with you absolutely confirms this, our closeness is magnified through our kink experience.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if you have a vanilla partner and you have a kink dynamic, in the end, you're going to be drawn into that kink world because the rabbit hole takes twists and turns.
Yeah, and because the type of authenticity in the kink dynamic is way different than vanilla. There's a lot of surface with vanilla, It can be very close too, but the reality is kink requires you, based on just the things you're experimenting and doing, to communicate. I'm sure there are kinksters that don't communicate, but I'm saying, I'm talking about successful dynamics.
Right.
It's just an interesting conversation because it does happen.
Yes. I think when, another variant would be if we had a dynamic. Mm-hmm. So this happens a lot in hot wife, cuckold, bull dynamics, mm-hmm. where the dynamic is split. So you have the woman who's a switch, mm-hmm. who's dominant over her husband at home as a cuck,
right,
and then has a submissive relationship to a bull,
right.
And so she's experiencing her switchiness.
Correct.
And what's interesting about that is, a lot of her power is given by her dominance over her cuck. Mm-hmm. And the impact of that is that she can maintain a balance between the two. Mm-hmm. And she keeps them quite separate. Yes. The cuck and the bull.
Okay.
She might include the bull in some activities at home. Mm-hmm. She might incorporate the bull into dominating the cuck.
Okay.
Sissifying him.
Yeah.
Turning him into a bisexual cuck cleaner, mm-hmm. fuck toy. But not necessarily. And the communication between the cuck and the bull is very limited.
Okay.
Generally.
Yeah.
So, there's just lots of different ways to square the circle.
Would you say, for the same question, an open relationship would be different?
Open?
Yeah, because she asked that question. She said, within a poly within a dynamic or poly within an open relationship. So I guess open would be vanilla, but open?
So open implies you can have sex with whoever you want.
Right.
It's open.
It doesn't have anything to do with whether you're kinky or not.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Right.
And so what that suggests is that the sex is limited to sex. Right? You're not getting into a relationship. Mm-hmm. If you're getting into a relationship with somebody, mm-hmm. that becomes more polyamorous.
That's poly, and that's what she's talking about.
So if there are...
So then it's not open anymore. It would be polyamorous.
Yeah, that it's
because no matter if the third person is not sexually involved with one of the two, or both of the two others, let's just say if we're talking a threesome, it's still poly because they're a Metamour.
Yeah. No, that absolutely falls into the polyamorous dynamic. But open implies you can have sex with whomever.
Right.
Swingers have sex with whomever.
Yeah.
Those are open relationships. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is like, if we had an open relationship, mm-hmm. you might say to me, I'm not going to be home tonight.
Right.
And that would be that. And I wouldn't expect to have a conversation with your partner.
Right. Because it's not a relationship.
It's not a relationship. Now, we're not addressing safe sex. We're not addressing that.
Right.
But, in a dynamic that involves people not intimately in the dynamic, mm-hmm. safe sex is a problem because you're always having to deal with whoever you're sleeping with and who they've been sleeping with.
Right.
And there has to be a lot of trust if you're going to have unprotected sex with partners that you're not ordinarily engaged with.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
There was a time when there wasn't as much concern about unprotected sex outside of pregnancy.
Yeah.
But, since AIDS, it's been like a pretty scary phenomenon.
Yeah.
So it occurs to me that, we're not addressing the question of sexually transmitted diseases. Mm-hmm. But in any multi-party sexual participation, mm-hmm. you have to be concerned about STDs. You just have to.
Yeah.
Now, separately from that, we're talking about the relationship stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to come down to communication. It's always going to come down to, is everybody on the same page?
authentically, like integrally. I mean, I'm just say that because you sometimes get people who they want to be a team player, if you will, or they want to be not rock the boat, or they don't want to be the one out. So initially they're like, okay, yeah, sure. And then later they have backpedaling, which everyone's allowed to change their mind. I'm not saying they aren't allowed to change their mind, but heavy backpedaling, like they really didn't want that to happen in the first place.
Yeah. So this is where communication is important, and how
continued communication.
But how it's important is the thing that people don't deal with in this communication is the impact of the behaviors. They might deal with the upset.
Okay.
You said you wouldn't fuck her ass. You said you wouldn't.
Right.
But what they don't deal with is the impact. You know, when you say you're not going to fuck her ass and then you fuck her ass, the way it leaves me is like concerned about, like, can I trust anything you say?
Right.
Right?
Right.
The impact is I lose trust in you. The impact is I feel devalued.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There's an impact.
Yes. Exactly.
And the impact on you is that now you've lied to me. And the impact on her is that she doesn't know.
She doesn't know, and she thinks that's okay.
She thinks it's okay. So as far as she's concerned, like, she thinks it's all fine. When she discovers that you did that outside of our agreements, she's going to be impacted.
She's going to be impacted by that.
And then we're all going to be impacted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so you got to deal with the impact, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to make amends, you know, you have to deal with the impact, and then you got to put in place some form of system or structure to deal with that circumstance in the future to everybody's satisfaction. And, you know, when trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. You have to rebuild it.
Time. Yeah.
It takes time. So I think you know, when there's communication that breaks down and things happen and somebody's backpedaling, you got to deal with the impact.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a million versions of this because of the way people can group up together.
Sure.
So it's really, there isn't just one cookie cutter method to say, okay, if you're in a poly, this is what you do. There really isn't. It does come down to the basics of communication is your, cornerstone of everything.
Right.
But then you're dealing with it's why it's called dynamic. It's a dynamic thing.
Yeah. And the reason people have challenges in relationship is because they have expectations about behavior that are unspoken.
They're not communicated. They're unspoken expectations. And then they have disappointment over unspoken expectations. So for example, if you went out and fucked her ass and you came back and shared that, and I had it like you weren't going to do that, but we never talked about it. Oh, yeah. And then I just get mad that you fucked her ass. But you're still going to be mad. You're still having an impact because you've created that.
Yes, but it's a very unreasonable.
It's unreasonable, but impact. That's what humans do.
Yes, that's my point.
So I'm just saying, like, even in the dynamic you were talking about that you had before, technically he could have assumed you weren't going to get marked. She wasn't going to get marked. Right. He could have, in his head, made his own story up and said, that's just not going to happen. This is playful. We'll do this. And then it happens, and so then he has this kind of internal conversation with himself, like, well, it's just once, or, the next time it happens, or whatever. He does it until it finally bothers him, right? But it probably bothered him the whole time.
Probably did, yeah.
To be honest, he just... That's what I'm leading to, is that's a typical situation that people do in all kinds of stuff in life, not just sex, but everything.
Yeah. And so I think that if you're in a kink dynamic with another human being, which is hopefully who you're in a kink dynamic with.
Yeah.
Woody Allen used to say, the problem with my sex life is it only involves one consenting adult.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But if you're in a kink dynamic with another human being, you need to have clean communication about your dynamic in that relationship.
Yeah.
And then, if you're going to add a person, you have to have a lot of conversations in the dynamic about what that looks like, and what is and isn't on the table, and what is and isn't agreed to, And there has to be like contractual agreements, like actual agreements about what that's going to involve.
Yeah.
And then the person who's going to involve themselves outside has to be in communication with that person about these are the agreements I've made about this relationship. And then, you know, it's probably wise for you to talk to my Metamour and understand that, you know, so you get what they're interested in. And so polyamorously, I think there's some people who agree or who think that the partner should talk with the Metamour, and there's some people who think they shouldn't.
Oh, okay.
And that's going to depend on the circumstances.
And on the grouping, yeah.
But, you know, when you're adding kink to anything, the standard for communication goes way up high.
Yeah.
Because you're now talking about subspace, and you're talking about, you know, bondage and discipline and sadomasochism. And you're talking about, you know, things that take a person into a different realm where their consciousness isn't necessarily present. So there has to be super good, super clean, super consistent communication.
Right.
And you have to revisit the issues from time to time.
It's not static.
No. Yeah, and that's one thing you and I do. Like, we talk a lot.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah.
Like every day.
Yeah.
About things.
All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. And we kind of stay on the same page. So hopefully that sort of gets to the nub of the question.
Yeah. So I feel complete.
Okay, good. Me too.
That's it for today. You can find us on your favorite podcast directory. We also have an RSS feed. If you're interested in online coaching for Kinksters or online domination, you can visit our Patreon website at Lady Petra Playground. And if you're having comments or suggestions or drink ideas for our podcast, you can email me at ladypetraplayground@gmail.com.
That's it.
That's it.
Cheers.
Cheers.